those of you new to my channel, I don't normally film in a park, but because I'm home for the summer, I'm just kind of shooting when I can. So today we are discussing Jordan Peele's new movie, Nope. And just to give you a brief summary, after random objects falling from the sky result in the death of their father, ranch-owning siblings OJ and Emerald Haywood attempt to capture video evidence of a UFO with the help of a random tech salesman and a renowned cinematographer. So I've only watched the movie once, and my opinion of this film could change after a second viewing or even 1 year down the line. But there are two things that kept me engaged throughout. First, it's a beautifully shot film from beginning to end. I mean, the mountains, the landscape, it never feels cheap or rough. You know, it kind of makes you want to go there. You know, it was just views on views on views on views. Like, it was just beautiful. And the second reason the film was able to keep my attention is because of the characters. This was an incredibly well cast film. And you guys tell me, I can't tell if the cast, sold the story or made up for the story. Like, that'll be an interesting conversation to have. And the film starts very slowly, but when it kind of hones in, it works. So again, I watched the movie once, and my first impression was, like, I loved it. And so the movie begins with a sitcom massacre when this monkey Gordy, who's been forced to star in this TV show, loses it and brutally annihilates not only the cast, but the studio audience, leaving only two sole survivors, one of whom is mutilated. And I think the point of this opening was to show how everything has a breaking point. And with that, we're introduced to the Haywood family. So as I mentioned in the brief summary, after the death of their father, OJ and his sister Emerald are struggling to keep their dying business, Hollywood Horses, alive. And, Hollywood is an industry where everybody is disposable and replaceable. And, OJ and his sister are struggling to keep their family legacy alive and also cope with the sudden and mysterious death of their father. So trying to take advantage of their dire situation is Ricky Jupe Park, one of the sole survivors of that sitcom massacre. And Ricky is an interesting character because unlike OJ, he knows what it's like to be in the spotlight. He was once a very promising child actor. His career was on the up and up. And, his dreams were dashed when Gordy essentially massacred them. So overnight, this kid goes from being famous to infamous. And this infamy over time isn't really enough to keep him in the spotlight. And so he's kind of paralyzed by his past, right? Like, he's able to make a fortune and create a successful business, but still Ricky has this desire to get back in the spotlight, right? He does not want to be pushed into the background. And Ricky is a beautiful example of flying too close to the sun. I mean, here's a guy who saw firsthand what happens when you try to, control wild animals, and then he takes it a step further, right? He takes it a step further by sacrificing animals in hopes of, one day, like, getting back to that point, right? He wants to get famous again. And of course that backfires, but he's a wonderful contrast to someone like OJ who's just trying to survive, right? Like, this guy he doesn't want the spotlight, he doesn't want any of it, he just wants to keep his father's legacy alive and be left alone. And so OJ, despite his family's legacy, they have a very long history in Hollywood, and it's not enough, right? Like, as much as everybody respects them, no one's really willing to do them any solid. And OJ, again, he has no charisma. He's not able to, keep the interest of potential employers. And his sister, although she does have that charisma, is just lacks focus, and she's not that interested. And the main thing that sold me on this movie, which is why I find it hard to give it a bad review, is not just the characters, but the contrast between them. I think this was an incredibly smart, well-cast movie. And so I'll start with OJ and his sister. OJ, more than his sister, felt the aftermath of their father's death, right? He saw it. And he doesn't get what happened. He's like, what just happened? And out of all the characters, OJ has the most humanity. right? He's the one that, like, you know, he's the only good person in all of this. And he's keeping the business alive in part, you know, to respect his father, but also he loves the animals, right? You get the sense that he really feels a close attachment to these horses. And you also get the sense that he doesn't like how these horses are using as props or bait. Like, he really doesn't appreciate it. And although his job is to break them, he appreciates, like, the limits. You know, he knows that at the end of the day, like, you know, this is a wild animal and you got to respect it. And again, OJ is the only character that's not trying to stand out, but as the film goes on, he stands out the most, right? He's the most talented. Like, he can barely speak up. He whispers. Like, to be honest, like, outside of his family, he's not really comfortable around people. You know, the only person he's comfortable around is his sister. And even then, he kind of, like, tolerates her. Like, there's this one scene where they're on set and this guy basically says to OJ, like, tell the horse we're ready. And he's like, no, the horse needs a break. Like, that's not how it works. You can't tell a horse you're ready. You know, like, you know, it's really interesting. You can barely tell human beings what to do. You know, just ask the Department of Corrections. Like, the idea that you can somehow control wild animals, you know, just to the point where it's like, okay, I'm ready now, is absurd. You know, OJ, again, he has a lot of humanity. And then you have his sister. And this contrast between his sister and him, like, you either loved it or hated it. Like, you either loved Keke Palmer in this, or you're like, she is just, like, it's a love it or hate it performance, in my opinion. And my first impression of Emerald is, you know, she was giving me, like, Moochie vibes, you know, like, she was giving me, like, here for a good time, not a long time. Like, she was just there, and, like, you could tell she drops in a lot. And she always has, like, one foot out the door. And he's always just kind of like, I mean, like, you're gonna leave anyway, so you might as well just leave now. And Emerald, she wasn't as close to their father as OJ was. And you get the sense that there's some resentment there. Like, she has some unresolved issues with him. And that's probably in part why she keeps coming back to this ranch. And so the family is at rock bottom. You know, they are not doing well at all. So with the family at rock bottom, things start to take a promising turn when out of nowhere, this monster alien thing just starts to terrorize them. So with the help of this random tech guy and cinematographer, OJ and Emerald decide that the only way to save their family business is to kill this thing. But then Emerald takes it a step further by prioritizing getting the shot in hopes that, you know, this will not only save them, but give them new life. And so the only person who's not at all interested in prioritizing this shot is OJ. And more so than that, he's the only one interested in, like, trying to figure out what this thing is, which was so funny because normally in these films, like, people care a lot. You know, they're like scientists, they try to recruit experts, you know, they try to find the mythology, like, why is it here? What is it about this place? You know, why is it hiding in this cloud? Like, there were so many unanswered questions that they just didn't care to answer. They were just like, listen, I just want to take a selfie with this thing and, you know, kill me, but never forget me, you know. And OJ was just like, yeah, it's a no for me. And more so than that, he's the only one genuinely interested in saving these animals. Like, he does not like the idea that these horses are being used as props or as bait or as a distraction. Like, for him, this is disgusting. And so he puts himself at the same level of risk. You know, he's saying, listen, like, we're all props here. You know, like, when we've always been in the background, you know, like, and I love that. You know, like, he respects the animals and he respects the business, right? Like, for him, like, they are the backbone, right? And so that scene when he's on the horse, like, he was just a movie star and he wasn't trying. You know, he's the only person not trying to stand out, but he stands out the most. And so as far as the rest of these raggedy characters are concerned, like Emerald is something else. Like, she has a chip on her shoulder, in part because she wasn't close to her father, and in part because her family has this, like, legacy in Hollywood, and she wants to, like, contribute to this legacy in some way, you know, and this shot is her opportunity to do so. Then you have this tech guy who, I don't know where this guy came from, but he was so well cast right from the beginning. Like, his girlfriend breaks up with him to go on the CW. Like, he was just something else. And He wants fame, he wants fortune. He also kind of low-key wants to prove that aliens exist. And then there's this cinematographer. This guy said 2 words and I was already hooked. He was very engaging. I don't know where they found this man, but he was so perfectly cast. Like, he just didn't care. He was suicidal. Like, he was tired of being behind the camera. I think he just wanted to be in the shot. You know, he wanted to like be captured. Like, he was just something else. Like, I don't know. This guy was just, he was fantastic. And so now they have like this team together, right? And again, the excitement builds. It doesn't build in regards to like, oh my God, we're gonna save the world. Oh my God, we're gonna like learn more about the species. Like, oh my God, like this is such a groundbreaking. No, the excitement builds because that now they have the right team and they're gonna get this shot. They're gonna get the perfect shot. Like, the stars have aligned, and you know, it's time to rock and roll. And speaking of this alien, you know, I'll just touch on this alien before I give you my final thoughts. The idea of this alien was brilliant. You know, I thought it was a spaceship. I thought it might be a hologram from another ranch trying to scare these guys away. But when you realize it's a monster, like just a giant, you know, ruthless monster that lives in a cloud, and that the only way to survive is to avoid its gaze, like, whew, I mean, the total lack of respect, right? Like, the impulse here isn't to understand this thing, right? Like, everybody's thinking, okay, like, how can we use this wild animal as a prop to get famous? Like, can we control this thing long enough to make a name for ourselves? You know, and one of the things that might bother you about this movie is their reactions to things, right? Like, here you have literally a giant killing machine, and still they're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? The only person who has like any honest motivations is OJ. And you see that with Emerald, right? Like, she has 1 foot in, 1 foot out. She's scared, but she's not scared enough to leave, right? Because that possibility of like maybe getting famous off this is just too strong. And you see that with Ricky as well. Like, he's terrified, but it's not enough to deter him. You know, he's seen what happens when you push an animal to its breaking point, but still, like, fame and fortune, like, it's just not enough to deter his ass. And so I don't know when self-preservation became synonymous with being famous, right? Like, there's a brilliant scene where TMZ comes in, and at first I thought it was an alien, I thought it was the CIA, I thought it was something else, but no, he just wants the shot. And everybody wants to be the first person to do it, right? Everybody wants to be like, nobody wants to die unknown. You know, this whole idea of like self-preservation and fame, like, I think that's why I love the movie so much from like a storytelling standpoint, because again, it all goes back to OJ's character. Like, that scene when he's on the horse with this like crew t-shirt, you know, like, I think the thing with this movie is that there was something very nuanced about it. And I do think it was like, there was a lot of respect given to these people who work behind the scenes, right? Like, here's OJ and his family, they're running this dying business, right? Hollywood horses. And it's not something you think about, right? Like, the amount of work that goes into making a star or making something possible, like, you know, like, it's an illusion. And so the whole time OJ's on the horse, and like, I just kept thinking, like, this guy is so cool. And you're watching a setup. It felt like you were watching real professionals and not people pretending to be professionals. And I think sometimes we forget that when we're watching movies. Like, the people behind the camera are the real OGs. You know, like, those are the ones that, like, we don't know. So again, aside from characters, that was the other thing I really loved. Like, there was some respect there for these people behind the scenes. And again, as the movie goes on, I think OJ becomes really important. And again, the way he puts himself with the horse, as if to say, like, listen, like, we're not props anymore. Like, I'm not gonna sacrifice myself. I'm not gonna beg anymore. Like, you know, we're more than just props. We're more than just bait. You know, like. Also, I do think that Jordan Peele is someone that roots for the underdog, and you see that with his casting choices. I mean, and OJ is the perfect character, right? He's down and out, and he finds a way to get back up there. So I do think this movie is also a testament to the underdog. So yeah, Now moving into my final thoughts. Overall, this is definitely worth a watch. And I think the thing that kept me engaged for 2 hours again were the characters. I think it was a very, very well cast film. And I wonder, had it not been for these characters, could I have sat through it for 2 hours? And that's a question you guys have to ask yourselves as well. And I have talked to people who have loved this movie. I've talked to people who have hated this movie, and it is just something else, you know? And there's a lot of things you could read into this film. How many of those things are actually there? I don't know. You know, I do think there is commentary to be made in terms of like the people who work behind the scenes. Like, again, I thought it was so beautiful that OJ sacrificed himself with the horse. Everyone is so concerned with being in the spotlight and being up front, and you know, he's kind of like the only one that clues into the fact, like, listen, there would be no stars without us. You know, like if you guys want any hope of enjoying your fame and fortune, we got to stop this thing. And I loved him for that. Like, so I think there is commentary to be made about how much work goes behind the scenes and how underappreciated and how, you know, disrespected these people are. In terms of everything else, I don't know, y'all. Like, is it really there? And if you think it's there, respectfully, like, give me your interpretations in the comments below. Like, Jordan Peele for me is almost like the opposite of someone like M. Night Shyamalan, who just right out the gate gets bad reviews. Like, M. Night Shyamalan, some of his movies have gotten such atrocious reviews, and I don't even think they deserved all that. Like, Old was a good example. Like, I don't think it was that bad. You know, it was a solid 60 or 70%. It didn't deserve a 20%. Like, you know, like, people act like, who gave this man a camera? Like, that's a good example of a director that's had such extremes, you know, like really good reviews and really bad. And the bad ones, I'm just like, damn, like, he didn't deserve all that. And A24 is another example where people love their movies, but not everything they do is good. You know, not everything they do is a masterpiece. Like, it's okay to be like, okay, well, this one just didn't hit. And so I think we kind of live in this era where people really get attached to certain artists. Like, there's kind of this weird parasocial thing. So they want to love and support everything they do, but you can support, you know, like there's a way of still supporting someone, but criticizing them, right? Like, there's always room for improvement. And so with that being said, you know, for the people who loved it, tell me why you loved it. Think about it. The ones who didn't like it, tell me why you didn't like it. Those who were just confused and they were just like, yeah, I just came, like, I don't know what this was. I don't know why this was there. You know, cool. You know, tell me why you were confused and have like a harmonious discussion. You know, like, I think if you have to prove your point to someone, you probably don't even think what you really think. You know, and again, this is a film that I could watch on a second viewing and think it's even greater. Or I could come back a year from now and think it's like, what the hell was that? So for now, I definitely say go watch it. And, you know, have a conversation with the people around you. Like, that has been the most fun part for me. Like, seeing all the different opinions. So yeah, you guys let me know what you think. Remember, a fact and opinion are not the same thing. You're allowed to disagree and they can coexist in the same space. So y'all be nice to each other. Don't act crazy. Lay out your points. And see what you get out of it. All right, until next time, you know, signing out from the park.